As an intro, my name is Erin Harlan. I'm part of the product marketing team, and I'm joined today by my colleague Daniel Stein from our product management team. And today we are very, very excited to share with you some new functionality that our customers have been requesting from us for a long time. And that is the ability to create cross-sheet formulas and also use the VLOOKUP function. So our learning objectives today are we're going to learn how to create a cross-sheet formula in Smartsheet. We're also going to learn how to set up a VLOOKUP function across sheets. And then we're also going to review some best practices when using cross-sheet formulas in Smartsheet. So just to kind of help understand this concept, cross-sheet formulas allow users to reference data in other sheets inside of any formula. And what's unique about Smartsheet cross-sheet formulas is that you can reference data from any sheet that you're shared to throughout Smartsheet, no matter if it's located in a different workspace or a different folder. Therefore, formulas are now much more powerful and flexible, and this allows you to really accelerate execution and enable better decisions by making those data connections easier and faster. So let's take a look at an example and see how this works. So any of us who've ever bought anything online before are familiar with this concept of placing an order and then having that order filled from a warehouse. So we've set up a simple example here of a food supplier who sells food to different restaurants. And this supplier has one sheet where they track incoming orders from their customers, and then they have a separate sheet in a separate location where they track their inventory. So let's take a look at both of these sheets and see how we can use cross-sheet formulas in both of these. And you can see I have my inventory sheet here in green. And on my inventory sheet, I have all the products that I have in inventory, that product ID, I have the unit price, the restocking price, and what my current starting inventory is for all of these items. And then on my customer order sheet, I actually have orders that are coming in from my different customers. And it's got the order ID, the customer name, the order date, the product, and the product amount that customer is ordering. And all of this is filled out actually on a form. So a customer just simply fills out a form, and these orders come into my order sheet. Now, of course, if I go back to my inventory sheet here, I may want to calculate how many items of spaghetti, for example, is my top item, and I've got 2,495 boxes in stock. I may want to be able to calculate how many orders I currently have open for spaghetti to make sure that I actually have enough inventory to fill those orders. So what I can do, because that information, my order information, is actually on another sheet, is I can set up a cross-sheet formula here. I can, for all formulas in Smartsheet begin with an equal sign. And I can, if I'm using a function, I can come over to my function button on my toolbar, and I can select functions here, or I can simply type them into my cell. So in this example, I want to add up all of my orders for spaghetti, but actually what I want to do is I want to use a sum if, because I only want to add up orders if they are orders for spaghetti. And what's nice is whenever I type in a function in Smartsheet, I get this formula, inline formula help window that gives me the information that I need for setting up that function. So it's going to give me what arguments I need. And then also notice it's going to give me this reference another sheet link. And this is where I can now pull in data from a different sheet into my formula. So for my sum if, the first thing I want to do is I want to look at the range where I'm matching or I'm going to be looking for spaghetti. And that range is actually in my customer order sheet. So I can go ahead and select this reference another sheet link, and it's going to then pull up all the sheets that I have access to. And this is one of those valuable things about cross-sheet formulas is any sheet that I'm shared to, I can use in this formula. So I'm going to go ahead and select my customer order sheet here. And notice then it's going to actually pull in, this looks very similar to cell linking if you've ever used cell linking before, and it's going to actually show me then all the information in my sheet. And what I actually want to reference for this function for my range is I want to look at my product column for all my orders, right? So I can either select a specific range here, or I can actually select the entire column. And it's a best practice in cross-sheet formulas to select that entire column, because then anytime I have new orders coming into my order sheet, they will automatically be brought into my function. So I'm going to go ahead and select this column, my product column, and notice Smartsheet will set a default range name for that selected reference. So it's going to be the sheet name, range 1, or I can actually customize the name of my range. And this is also another best practice with cross-sheet formulas, is custom name your ranges. That way you can better identify them in your functions. So this is going to be customer product. And I'm going to go ahead and select insert reference. And notice now it's going to put that named range, customer product, in curly brackets here in my function. And the curly brackets tell me that this data is actually coming from another sheet. Okay, the next thing I need, of course, is my criteria. So what is it that I want to match against my customer product column? And that is spaghetti. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my cell reference for spaghetti on this sheet, and it'll put my cell reference in here, product name 1. And then the third selection that I want in my SUMIF function is going to be my sum range. So what actual values then am I summing? And what I actually want to sum is the quantity. So anytime spaghetti matches in my customer product column, I want to sum the quantity in that order. So again, I'm going to make a second reference to another sheet, and I can come back to the button here. And for this second range, I'm actually going to select my quantity column. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll relabel this also in my sheet reference quantity, and I can go ahead and insert that reference, and then I can close my function. And now look at what it's doing is it's automatically summing then anytime that I have an order for spaghetti, and it's pulling in then my total number of orders for spaghetti. Also notice that on my total ordered now I have this little blue arrow that's pointing in, and this looks again very similar to cell linking. What this is doing is it's actually telling me that there is some information coming into this formula from another sheet. And actually if I click on this cell, it will give me that function. So if I need to go back and edit the function at all, I can do that. Or if I also click on it, it's also going to show me my edit reference option. And it's actually going to show me my references in the curly brackets that are coming from other sheets. So if I need to edit my customer product reference, for example, I can simply click on that and it will open up that reference window, and I can redefine whatever that range is in my formula. So very easy to edit. Also notice if I go to my customer order sheet now, notice that both my product column and my quantity column now have these little gray arrows pointing outward. Again, similar to cell linking, it gives me that visual indicator that this data is actually being used in a formula on another sheet. And if I select any of those cells, it'll actually tell me, hey, this value is being used in a formula on your inventory sheet. So I can see that very easily. Now, what's nice about this, of course, is that I can, just like in all formulas, relative referencing is the default functionality in Smartsheet. So I can select that formula and I can copy paste it down, and now I have that same cross-sheet formula for each of the items I have in inventory. So this one's looking at spaghetti, this one's calculating the total macaroni, this one's calculating the total rigatoni orders, fettuccine orders, etc. So what's nice is I can write that function once, and then because of relative referencing, I can easily copy and duplicate that cross-sheet formula all the way down for all of the items I have in inventory. Now let's jump back to my customer order sheet. And on this sheet, one of the things that I want to be able to calculate is also the unit price, right? I want to calculate what's that total price that each customer is going to owe for their order. And again, my pricing information is set up on my inventory sheet. So the way that I can pull this in is what's called the VLOOKUP function. So if you've used other applications and you've used VLOOKUP before, you're probably familiar with this. If you've used the lookup function on the same sheet in Smartsheet, again, very similar. But what's nice about VLOOKUP is it allows me to reference an entire lookup table in another sheet and pull in specific matching values. So I can go ahead and set up my VLOOKUP. And again, my formula, my inline formula help card will open up and show me all the information I need to set up this function. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my search value, which is going to be the product name on my order sheet. So for this one, I'm going to do spaghetti, right? So I'm going to put spaghetti in. That's what my first value is. I want to look for what the cost of spaghetti is. The second thing I'm going to want to do is select my lookup table. And in this instance, my lookup table is actually on my inventory sheet. So I can go ahead and I can reference my inventory sheet here. And if I open my inventory sheet, an important thing to note is when I'm selecting my table for a VLOOKUP, whatever my first criteria is, so product name spaghetti, it needs to be the first column in my lookup table. So I know I'm going to want to select product name as well as everything all the way to unit price because I want to actually calculate what that price is. So I'm going to go ahead and select all four of these columns. And I know unit price is the fourth column in this table. I want to remember that because that's going to be my next criteria. So I'm going to select product name, product ID, supplier, unit price, and I'm going to just call this my inventory pricing range. And I'll go ahead and insert that. Notice it comes in again in my curly brackets. The next value is going to be which column number then do I want to pull in from that table, and we noticed our pricing is in column 4, so I'm going to select column 4. And then the last option is what type of match do I want. So I can do an exact match by using false or an approximate match using true. In this scenario, I really want it to be an exact match. I want spaghetti to exactly match spaghetti. So I'm going to use false in my function. And there you go. Now it's pulling in that unit price. So 90 cents per box. And what's nice about this is, again, for all of these cross-sheet formulas, it is live information. So if I go to my inventory sheet and I change that price to 95 cents, for example, that's going to automatically update here on my order sheet. And of course, I can drag all this down as well, easily bring that down. And again, I'm calculating the price for all of these. And now what's nice as well is I can use this information in other formulas. So now I want to know the total price of this order. I can simply use quantity times my unit price. And now I have, of course, the price for all of my orders. Very simple and easy. Another thing that's important to note about this, and again, I can do the same thing on my inventory sheet here. Maybe I want to calculate my current inventory, is that I can then, use that data in other functions. So maybe my current inventory is going to be my starting inventory minus my orders. And again, I've got my current inventory all the way down. And maybe I want to have some other things that are triggered by that. I can maybe have some conditional formatting, or maybe I have a restocking notification set, an automated action happening whereby when the inventory or current inventory is less than 1,000, I want to notify shared users. So then if any of these values change, maybe one of these orders changes, let's go change our order for spaghetti actually. Let's make our spaghetti order now 1,000 boxes instead of 450. Now notice that of course has changed my order total and it has changed my current inventory amount. So now that value is now going to trigger a notification to come to all shared users on this sheet saying, hey, we're running out of our spaghetti and stock in the warehouse and we actually need to restock that item. My cross-sheet formulas can also be part of a bigger workflow process, is what I wanted to highlight. Okay, coming back to our slides here, let's just go through a couple best practices that we talked about when using cross-sheet formulas. This one I didn't really talk to a ton, but I think it's important to highlight is the permissions. So you can use cross-sheet formulas on any sheets that you are shared to. However, it's important to note as you must be shared with at least editor access on the destination sheet. So the sheet wherever you're actually typing out that formula, you want to, with that equal sign, you want to make sure you're at least an editor on that sheet, which means that you can actually type in a formula on that sheet. But then whatever your source sheet, so wherever you're pulling that data from, you can be simply a viewer on that sheet. So you don't necessarily need to be an editor on the data you're pulling into a cross-sheet formula. Another best practice, we talked about referencing the entire column for more accuracy. This is definitely a best practice because, for example, like the example we showed, if you have data that's constantly changing or new rows that are being added to your sheet, you want to make sure that those are automatically pulled into your formula. So you can best do that by referencing an entire column. Also, you can custom name your ranges in cross-sheet formulas, and this is definitely a best practice so that you can clearly identify what that range value is that you've selected, and then if you need to go in and edit it or change it at any time, it just helps you better identify that range. We showed the SUMIF function today, but definitely get to know that SUMIF function as well as COUNTIF. So whereas SUMIF will sum values based on specific criteria, COUNTIF will count values based on specific criteria. And again, a really powerful functions to utilize with cross-sheet formula functionality. Also, as we showed, get to know the VLOOKUP function. VLOOKUP is really powerful and allows you to select an entire table range of data from another sheet and pull in those specific values and reference those in a lookup capacity. And then for those of you who want something even more flexible than VLOOKUP, we didn't show this one, but you can also use index and match together in cross-sheet formulas. So if you want to be even more flexible with how you're cross-referencing data, index and match also work pretty well. I also want to highlight some different formula resources that we have available to you. So we do have the Help Center, of course. If you go to help.smartsheet.com and you type in the word formula, there's a bunch of information on all the different functions that we have available. There's also step-by-step instructions for cross-sheet formulas, so a lot of resources there. Also in our template gallery, we have a template called Smartsheet Formula Examples that also gives the syntax as well as some sample data for all of those functions. We have some great videos in our video center on how to create cross-sheet formulas. So if you want to watch some more tutorials, and then also our blog, smartsheet.com/blog, there's some great articles about cross-sheet formulas as well as some other formula functionality. Okay, I would love to now turn it to Daniel, who is the product manager for this functionality, and review some questions. Welcome, Daniel. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Erin.
So we have a lot of questions. One of the first ones that we have coming up is there a limit to the number of cells that you can reference in a cross-sheet formula?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So in cross-sheet formulas, you can reference up to 25,000 total cells coming in from other sheets. Those of you who might have used cell links in the past, you might know that the limit for that was 5,000. So this is 25,000, so we've bumped that up.
Okay, awesome. Another question is, what's the difference between cross-sheet formulas and cell links, and when should each be used?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So cell links are not going away, and many of you are probably familiar with cell links, and that's used if you have cases where you basically want to mirror a cell value and have the same value appear in both sheets without doing any calculations. And so if that's what you want to do, cell links are still great and would still encourage you to use that. For some people, cell links will be easier to use than cross-sheet formulas because you don't need to know anything about formulas. Now, in any case where you do need to perform calculations, that's when cross-sheet formulas are going to be much better, and we'd encourage you to do that.
Okay, great. Here's one. Once I've mastered the VLOOKUP and the SUMIF and the COUNTIF, what cross-sheet formulas should I learn next?
Yeah, so there's a few. There are a lot of different possibilities with cross-sheet formulas. So you had mentioned earlier, Aaron, index and match, and so wanted to call out that as an alternative for VLOOKUP. It's a little bit more flexible. So VLOOKUP, your lookup value always has to be in the leftmost column, whereas index and match, you can kind of actually choose any column that you want for your lookup and return value. So for some cases, that's better. If you don't need it, VLOOKUP is a little bit easier to learn. And so we talked about SUMIF and COUNTIF and showed that in the example. Those are great if you have one condition. Also definitely worth checking out the versions with S's at the end, SUMIFs and COUNTIFs. And you use those if you have more than one condition. So let's say you want to calculate how many tasks are past due and high priority, or have a red status or something. As soon as you have multiple conditions, that's when you want to use COUNTIFs and SUMIFs, and you can kind of put as many conditions as you want. Finally, a really interesting one that we released fairly recently is the collect function. And what collect does is it actually allows you to kind of have the same filtering functionality of COUNTIF and SUMIF, but use it inside of any other function. And so sometimes we hear customers, they want to effectively create an average if function. So average data only if it meets certain conditions. You can actually do that by putting a collect inside of an average. And so if you're interested in that, feel free to check out the help article on our support site for collect.
Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel. Also, here's another one. How does save as new work with cross-sheet formulas?
Yeah, so this is a good one to keep in mind. We know many customers are kind of creating solutions where they need to effectively create a template or a repeatable process. So it's good to keep in mind for save as new, if you set up cross-sheet formulas that go from one sheet to another, and if you save as new that sheet with cross-sheet formulas, by default, all of those cross-sheet formulas will continue to work in the new copy of the sheet, and they'll point to the original sheet. Similar to what you might be familiar with other features in the Save as New dialog, if you want to, you can actually uncheck the box and turn off and take away the cross-sheet formulas. In many cases, though, you'll want to keep it. Now, the other really powerful thing you can do is save as new an entire folder or an entire workspace. And so if you have a number of sheets that are kind of pointing to each other inside that folder or workspace with formulas, you can save as new the whole thing, and that entire thing will continue to work.
Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel. Really appreciate that. I also wanted to remind people, so these are all the resources that are available to you 24/7, the Help Center, the Template Gallery, the videos and the blog. But if you want to get more hands-on with formulas or have some more guided instruction, we also have a bunch of resources available both in terms of training and consulting. So we have a bunch of different training resources where we actually have learning modules on formulas. If you want to get hands-on and practice some of this stuff or learn from an instructor, we have everything from virtual to online to classroom to on-site. And you can really kind of take some deeper dives into formulas and cross-sheet formulas. Also, if you're trying to build some custom formula functionality or need some help setting up some of your functions or some best practices, we also have a consulting team that can help you. And that's what they do all day long, is work with integration and automation and some custom solution development, so they can also help you figure out what are going to be the best things that you need if you're building a greater process. And you can find out more about both of those offerings on our services page at smartsheet.com/services. All right, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We are at time, and I want to be respectful of people's time. We're very, very, very excited about cross-sheet formulas and VLOOKUP, and we hope that you are too, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.